The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it Thursdays here at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Cotter Clark. Hope you're well. The Masters, the 88th edition of underway. We'll get you a rundown on how that's going. Spring football, plenty to hear from Matt Rhule. Thoughts from the head man and the offensive line coach, Raiola. So that on the docket. Brandon Vogel checks in from Counter Reed. In about 20 minutes or so, in hour two, our chat with Gary Barnett, the topic of trusting young quarterbacks. And the other news of the day, O.J. Simpson dead at the age of 76. The headline from Deadspin, I don't know the last time many or any of you have visited Deadspin, but...
It really fell off a couple years ago.
Well, it says cancer murders the Jews.
Yikes.
Mm-hmm. So lots of reaction with OJ. We have some excerpts from an interview we did with OJ's agent, Mike Gilbert. Mike Gilbert's the guy who snuck in memorabilia to OJ during the trial back in the early 90s. Mike Gilbert had the Bronco. Mike Gilbert had one of OJ's Heismans. And just an excerpt from some past interviews. Had a chance to meet Mike, I think back in 07, 06, with his book that came out. And he's a guy that we turn to for the ESPN 30 for 30, OJ Made in America. So some thoughts from Mike Gilbert and his association with OJ. That on the docket, too. So we'll spend time with Daddy Burke, Burke's Best Bets, get his thoughts this weekend of not only Masters favorites, who he likes, but some Major League Baseball to soak in. 489-1240, 800-825-5865. Can dial us up on the Hail Varsity Radio Network phone lines. Can find us on the stream, Hail Varsity YouTube channel, Hail Varsity Radio Twitter. Give that a follow, and we'll get to our starting five in a moment. Fellas, how we doing? Are you gearing up for the big scrimmage on Saturday for Nebraska v. Nebraska? More importantly, what's y'all drinking this weekend for the Masters? We talked about the Azalea. We talked about the transfusion yesterday. The Azalea has a little bit of grenadine and vodka. The transfusion goes with either grape juice or a little bit more lime versus the lemon option. Some of us like John Daly's, that sweet tea with vodka. Others are just beer drinkers, but should be a good weekend of weather to kick back and watch those chase the green jacket. Or do you guys even get into golf on TV?
Oh, no. The Masters is the one weekend where it's like, all right, aside from my 3 o'clock intramural softball game on Sunday, I guess it's co-rec or whatever the hell it is, I don't know. Aside from that, on Sunday at 3, I will be just parked on my couch watching Sunday golf. I follow loosely Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Saturday, once the cuts happen, it's moving day. Mm-hmm. That's when I'll actually start to really actually pay attention to what's going on. But then Sunday, I will be parked in front of my TV all day watching the Masters. It's the one golf tournament a year I truly care about. I'll watch Sunday from like the U.S. Open and the Open. Like I'll watch those. But Masters weekend is an occasion. And it's the perfect way, I think, to usher in spring. Especially the timing almost always lines up in Nebraska where it's like the weather's just starting
Finally
to get
flips.
there. The grass is getting green. The trees are starting to bud out.
You can golf yourself.
You can go golf yourself. Yeah, the Masters truly kicks it off. The timing is perfect. So this is a weekend that I'll always sit down and watch some golf. I'm really looking forward to. As for the drinks, probably a lot of waters for me. Maybe can we do a dirty Arnold Palmer? Is that
John Daly?
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Well, John Daly is iced tea and...
Isn't it just iced tea and vodka?
I
No.
thought it's iced tea lemonade and vodka.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's the John Daly takes the leap from the Arnold Palmer.
See, and
Yes, and
instead
it's
of
delicious.
actually making my own tea
Both.
and whatnot,
Yes.
I'll just go get like the bottled Arnold Palmer brand stuff and then throw a splash of vodka in there.
Oh,
That might be
yeah.
my Sunday evening plan. But other than that, it's not going to be a huge drinking weekend for me. We went through my diet yesterday, so we don't need to get on that. Also, it's going to be warm weather. I'm going to be on the baseball diamond. I don't want to deal with any dehydration, heat stroke issues like I did last summer.
Bryson DeChambeau is slimmed down. He's -7 through 7 today. Willett at -4. Zalatoris. Hey, we talked about old Will Zalatoris not long ago, golfing in Lincoln, -4. Scheffler at -4, and Mr. Fox at -3. Tiger teed off about an hour ago.
Still even.
Still even. We can see how his weekend or his first couple of days progress. Let's get to the starting five. We shout out the first five in the stream and some others that make their way in. We appreciate you doing so. Like and subscribe to the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Eat Beef. Good work. Gets in first. Tim checks in, says, hey, y'all, Coach Raiola gave a good interview. He must be getting comfortable with his position. We'll hear from Donnie Raiola in a little bit. Dylan checks in. Woot woot. Dion. What's up, Dion? You're third. KG says, dang. Fourth. You blink for 1 second. You have Jeff is in. Brennan, mashed potatoes is what he's screaming. Good for Brennan from the Black Hills. Ben Scott, Dion says, ready to roll. We heard from him. Cruz says, howdy, nerds. Roger is in. Justin checks in as well. Brandon says, hello. Tuck is in. Shane is here from the central coast of California. Patrick says, what's up? Active Duty Husker, aloha. Aloha yourself. Active Duty, thanks for your service. Anonymous with the first OJ blast in the stream. OJ squeezed all the juice he could out of life, unfortunately, on multiple occasions.
When Connor's got a connection here to the O.J. Simpson murders.
Yeah.
What?
Well, not a direct one, but I guess kind of closer than a lot of people.
Talk.
My mom went to high school with Ron Goldman.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. He's 2 years older than my mom. They both went to Stevenson High School in Lincolnshire, Illinois. So when she found out, because obviously she was like probably in her 20s when all this was going on, and they found out that Ron Goldman was one of the victims. It was a pretty big deal.
Well, yeah, I mean, it probably, how close was she to Ron?
I mean, she wasn't friends with him, but
Just
she knew who
him.
he was.
Yeah, went to school together.
And I mean, Stevenson now is bigger than it once was. Like it's like 5,000 kids now. It's huge. But when my mom went there in the 80s, it was still a pretty large school. But she knew who. I think he knew who she was too. So I'm not going to call them friends, but they definitely knew each other, which is just kind of a crazy kind of sequence, wrinkle in time, whatever you want to call it. But that's my one little connection to the whole
That's a
O.J.
pretty
Simpson
big
thing.
connection to have Madre that went to school with Ron. Brian says they should bury O.J. in the white Bronco.
We'll get an update on the white Bronco from Mike Gilbert here a little bit later next hour. So that'll be good. I don't think that Ford Bronco will be given up for burial, but we'll see.
I mean, Twitter today has been on fire. I mean, it's been absolutely horrendous.
Oh, it's been great.
And funny
been
and sad
great.
and depraved. And I mean, you've got the still shot of the police escort following OJ and AC in the Bronco, and that's how some say the funeral procession should go. You have the reality of, two kids that lost their dad, and you have a guy that is, by all intents and purposes, still hated for what he got away with, allegedly.
As we kind of mentioned, Ron Goldman here, his dad spoke out today about OJ's death and just said it's no great loss to the world.
No,
I'm with him 100% on that. It's no great loss to the world. OJ was an incredibly talented football player. You can ask the question about how football may have impacted his decision-making later in life. It sounds by a lot of people who knew him that he was a completely different person post-football than he was during his football career. You wonder how that changed him. But at the end of the day, what OJ turned into following his football career was scum of the earth.
Pretty much.
I don't think I'm overselling that at all.
Did
he was scum of the earth.
Did he turn into it? Or was he always scum of the earth?
Pocket, yeah.
That's the $1 million question. Hey, he gave us a couple of great documentaries, though. I'll tell you how much.
Yeah.
For better or for worse.
Sure. So we'll hear excerpts from that documentary, Time. And, Anonymous is right. I remember where I was. Most of us do. Game 5, Rockets-Knicks NBA Finals got preempted by the 15-mile-per-hour Bronco chase. Anonymous, I remember it. You remember it. I got home from baseball, playing Summer League baseball, and you flipped the TV on, and what the hell is this going on out in L.A.? It was nuts, absolutely nuts. Let's get into some football thoughts and hear from Matt Rhule as Nebraska getting ready for a scrimmage. And the topic today is the offensive line. It's always a focal point. As it goes, so goes the Nebraska offense. We'll start up with cut 2 here and sizing up that offensive line for the Big Red. What's Matt Rhule think so far?
Yeah, I think the pleasant thing about the O-line is we have some depth of some guys who could challenge to play. So it's not just like, hey, these guys are going to be good players down the line. The guys that are running with the 2s and the 3s, the days we do 2s and 3s, I think some of them are proven that if given an opportunity, they could play. You know, offensive line is unique. Sometimes someone looks like a guard, but they really, when they play tackle, they are a natural fit and vice versa. But I think there's healthy competition, and there's a lot of depth being built. The young players that have gotten here, they might not think they're good players yet, but they're going to be really good players. Like, Grant Brix is doing a great job. Gibson Pyle, really pleased with him. A lot of those guys. But I think that tier of guys who've been here for a year or two, I think they're pushing the older guys. The older guys might not realize that, but as I see it, there's a bunch of guys I think could play.
Depth, and you don't want drop-off, fellas. If you got to go to somebody who didn't make the cut of the starting 5, you need 8. And does Nebraska have that? Will they have that by the fall? Quarterback separation, let's get there. Is this time to separate? Might be a little early, but Coach Rhule asked the question, how are you eyeing those quarterbacks when it comes to who's standing out and who's separating from the other?
Well, yeah. I'm always looking for separation, which means, because that means one guy's doing a great job, and then usually what happens is the next guy catches him. You know, we're all, he realizes, I better pick it up. When you play with a great player, I'm not calling anyone a great player. I'm saying when you play with a great player, or you play with someone who's doing things that you're not doing, it usually forces you then to catch up. So like the first day, we have 2 freshman quarterbacks, kind of a unique deal, right? Used to not be unique, but one guy comes out, flips the protection one day. The next guy, we have quarterbacks doing things in protections that I haven't had someone do in 11 years, in college football. So it just kind of builds a new normal, if that makes sense, right? Like, you're doing something at a high level, I catch you. So, yeah, my job is to make sure that all the quarterbacks, all 3 and all 5, we're not here to pick the starter. We're trying to make them all good enough to be the starter. We're trying to get them as good as possible. But separation shows that someone's achieving, and usually when you point it out, other guys, start to follow.
So that is Matt Rhule with the quarterback and that race, how it's going. Last thought, if we can squeeze it in, those freshman quarterbacks, cut 4, how they're pushing one another, and his view of the quarterback room, cut 4.
The way I'm able to see it, because of my role, is really just more in the play, when things I see happening. Within any offensive pass play, you can draw. We run the same play that maybe the Los Angeles Rams run, that someone else runs. But really, it just comes down to the intricacy of the things the quarterback's able to take advantage of. Whereas some people might just say, hey, throw it to him. If he's not open, throw it to him. If he's not open, throw it to him. As you get more evolved, it's like, well, if they give you this coverage, you also have this out here. And if you see one-on-one, you can go back here. And, hey, if they show you this blitz, protect yourself this way. So really, it's in the evolution of what the players can handle as you kind of scaffold your teaching, right? Okay, they know they mastered this. Let's teach the next thing. They've mastered this. What happens, I truly believe in that scaffolding process, right? As you're taking your time to teach them the next thing, when you have one player doing something here, the next player quickly catches up. As I said to you guys, players learn from players way more than they learn from us. So So that's what I see. I see both guys doing things at a really, really high level, but they're taking advantage of the things within our offense that maybe haven't been taken advantage of as of yet. And I think all three guys are doing that. And so that's been the really good thing. Today's going to be, as I told them out there on the field, today's going to be a day. What's happening to us, and it's part of culture now, right? Like everyone's waiting at home for us to put out something from practice today. They want to see the highlights. The highlights haven't been the reason why we haven't been to a bowl game in the last 6 years. It's the lowlights. And so I'm more of a, hey, what are the defects, eliminate the defects type of a coach. And so, yeah, we have some unbelievable wow plays, but let's talk about the amount of sacks we're giving up, or the big plays we're giving up, or the missed assignments that we have, or the missed opportunities in 2 minutes. So also making sure that we're coaching the what not to do and what to avoid. That's really the step for the quarterbacks, because both guys can make dynamic plays, but our season will be dependent upon how many times we beat ourselves on a play and how many times we don't. And that's really what you worry about with freshman quarterbacks, or what you have to teach for freshman quarterbacks.
Don't lose the game, right? Manage it, make a play here and there, but don't lose the football game. Love how he put that, fellas. Eliminate the defects and go back in and clean up some of those mistakes. But a lot of work going on. We'll get some thoughts from Brandon Vogel from Counter Read coming up. We'll hear from some of Mike Gilbert's comments on OJ at 40 past. Great to be with you on a Thursday. Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for spending time. Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. Brandon Vogel is in from Counter Read, counterread.com. A lot to unpack with Coach Rhule and Coach Raiola today. Vogues, how we doing here? Are you watching a little golf today while you're keeping an eye on football? Thanks for the time.
I'm doing well. I didn't get any golf in today, but I'm hoping that's kind of part of the plan for tomorrow. So I'll jump in a day late.
Your take on Augusta. Have you been by there?
Literally just driven through the city itself. So never spent any time there. It's out there. Like it feels close by from where I'm at, but Georgia's pretty wide. So it's not like a quick trip over there. So haven't made it there. Spent some time in Savannah on that side of Georgia, which is, as kind of picturesque as it looks. So that's about the extent of my Georgia coastline meanderings.
Our Augusta correspondent, Brandon Vogel, driving through Augusta. What's your feel right now as you kind of read the tea leaves with Matt Rhule, and he's pretty direct when asked questions, quarterback separation, offensive line, running back room. You have Montana Husker fan that chimes in with this observation. I feel like the fan base is suddenly sleeping on Emmett Johnson, but you have two Johnson backs. And Rhule touched on, hey, dudes, watch the 2021 film when Ramir Johnson was actually used. And, as you size up the running back room, aside from some protection breakdowns, as I read into it today, he likes where they're at carrying the football.
Yeah, the Ramir against Michigan in 2021 was a good poll by Matt Rhule, because I hadn't thought about that, but I remember thinking like, well, kind of separated himself as the guy maybe a little bit going into 2022, and then he just kind of disappeared. Sort of similar. Emmett Johnson, I thought showed some really good things at the end of this 2023 season. So yeah, to Montana Huskers' point, like slept on a little bit. Yeah, probably. I think there's just so much kind of uncertainty there with guys who simply aren't available at running back. It's probably the most curious would be the word I would use position group, I think, going at Nebraska right now in spring. And we'll see how that plays out come spring game.
Brandon, as you forecast it right now, especially with that running back room, I was going to ask, does Nebraska, I'm going to ask it differently. How important is it for Nebraska to have a 1,000-yard rusher in 2024? Because it's been a while.
Yeah. It's a good question. And it has been a while. I think it's pretty important. Not so important that I guess one guy gets there, though. That's what you're looking for is a guy who's good enough to rush for 1,000 yards. And we know that if that guy gets there, that's going to be on, if Matt Rhule has his way, about 20 carries per game. He said that's kind of what they want their lead guy to be. They want a 12 carry a game guy. And then I'm guessing third is maybe 8 carries a game. If they run it as often as they did last year, I think if the passing game's a little bit more proficient, that rush total comes down a little bit. But I do really think they use that as kind of a tone-setting identity type of approach. So it doesn't drop off. Even if quarterback play is as good as anybody could hope here in the offseason, I don't expect the rushing piece of the offense to fall off too far. So getting somebody to 1,000 yards would be a marker of a pretty successful season, I think.
Brandon, can you name all of the 1,000-yard rushers that Nebraska's had in the past decade?
Yes.
Zigbo got there. Abdullah got there. That's it.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah, because 14's the cutoff.
Yeah, 14's the cutoff, which is Amir's senior year. Mm-hmm. So Nebraska has been 5 years since their last 1,000-yard rusher in a Zigbo. Mm-hmm. In 10 years previous that.
That is ridiculous. Well, something I wanted to ask you, Brandon, just kind of opening up the run game, and obviously it all starts with the guys up front, and it starts with the running backs, but how much more of an impact can that dynamic quarterback play open up your run game? Because obviously you're going to throw in more pass plays there if you can, execute them well, but how much does that open up a run game? Because it just seems like every single time Nebraska played anybody, they could just stack the box and get whatever they want.
Yeah, that's the issue. The only way Nebraska really had to alleviate that pressure somewhat consistently, I mean, we saw them hit on some big play action passes, which, if you're going to stack the box is basically what they're begging you to do. And it's up to the opposing defense to kind of keep their eyes right and not bite on it. But mostly it was through the QB run game was their way to kind of take advantage of that in some cases. So I think a more proficient passing game, which doesn't even need to be like, oh, Nebraska's a top 30 passing team this year. Just complete 60 plus % of your passes. Like that would probably do a lot. They would be able to, I'd have to go back and look at the numbers, but my memory is, they were really, really run heavy on first down. And some of that I think had to do with just, you weren't that certain in what you're going to get when they put the ball in the air. If you feel a little bit more certainty, well, then you can throw on first down and you can run on second down, and it opens up so many more options. Like even if you're going to be really run heavy, if you don't have that complementary piece, it's going to be what we saw in 2023, which Nebraska kept running it, even though it kind of got harder and harder as the season and those games are on.
Brandon Vogel's with us from counterread.com. Some spring football thoughts. Do you feel like there's a giant gap between Team 1 and Team 2 on that offensive line, or do you feel like Nebraska has a plethora of options here that they're going to finish things up clearly in the spring, but moving forward here, do you like the pieces on that O-line?
I like the pieces. It's kind of hard to know what the gap is without seeing them a whole lot, but my reaction from afar is, no, I don't think there necessarily has to be a huge gap. You've got some very experienced players back with your top group, and that's good. But we saw some guys come in late last year, and they played pretty well. And I think we can talk a lot about Nebraska's sort of spring league approach and running 3 fields at one time. That benefits everybody in a lot of ways, I think. Probably benefits O-linemen as much as anything. And that's an area where, I think it's important to have, say, a 3-year starter playing next to a true freshman or a redshirt freshman. So I would be surprised if we felt like, well, Nebraska's got 5 pretty good O-linemen, but they better stay healthy because after that, it's a big drop-off.
It's Brandon Vogel with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. Some spring football thoughts. And Brandon, before we get your reaction to OJ passing away, which we're going to need to get to here in just a second, I feel like everyone's got an opinion that is not too kind to OJ, maybe deserved.
One word, good?
Yeah, good riddance maybe, if you want to use 2 words. We'll get there in just a second. Last thought here, though, on spring football. Once April 27th rolls around, you have more interest in the offense or the defense? And this sounds like an easy question on its face to say, well, the offense has new weapons coming in, a new co-offensive coordinator. But at the same time, it's the defense that I think really raises the floor for you in 2024, where if they can pick up where they left off, they really get you a good chance to get into a bowl game. And there are some new pieces on that defensive side of the ball. So it might seem like an easy question. But I want to get your thoughts on it. What side of the ball do you care more about once the spring game actually rolls around?
Yeah, I'll probably take the easy answer there because, well, and it's the honest answer for me. Like, I am more interested in the offense, and I'm hesitant to do this, but like at this time of year, it's far enough out. Like, I don't want to just put like defense over there and be like, yeah, they'll be fine. Look how good they were last year. Got a lot of pieces back. They'll be great. You hope that's the case if you're a Nebraska fan, and I think they have the returning experience coming back for you to feel pretty good about that being the most likely outcome. What can the offense do? And if the defense is that good, and it gets tricky in a hurry with spring game, it's like, what are the coaches letting you see? But I'd like to see the offense come out and have some success against that group of guys, because if Nebraska's that deep on defense, it almost doesn't matter what the personnel is. Like, it should be somewhat meaningful.
Do you feel like it's pretty authentic quarterback race? Yeah,
I do. It's still early enough that I'm not surprised. Well, the coaches, and even down to the players, like every time a player gets asked about the quarterback, and almost all of them do, they're very careful to mention everybody, which is, I think, something that it seems like that topic came up. Is my opinion on that. So I do think it's pretty legit at this point. They're just looking for somebody who can kind of stay in control of the offense. We've seen some really good plays from everybody, in the highlights that Nebraska shares. So it feels pretty real to me.
Well, Cotter dropped a little bit of a bombshell on us that his mother went to high school with Ron Goldman.
Oh.
Do you have any connections to OJ Simpson?
OJ, what are your connections
like to follow that up?
to OJ? Vogues, aside from getting rid of his rookie card after 1994?
Yeah, none other than I also rushed for 2,000 yards once in the NFL. That was kind of, I didn't know OJ personally, but we're always connected that way. Now,
did you do that in Madden?
Wow.
Yes, in Madden. No. The thing I remember about that, I remember one of my high school teachers wheeling a TV in so we could watch the verdict. But before that, the Bronco chase, we were at a high school basketball camp in Lusk, Wyoming, Mike Leach territory, not where he's from, but pretty close. Just like sitting in a hotel waiting to go play like 4 games in, 6 hours. Watching this craziness unfold. That's probably the part of it that'll always stay with me from that whole saga.
Brandon, who's the fitting choice to give the eulogy at O.J. Simpson's funeral? Norm Macdonald's now off the table, considering he's passed away. He would have been the perfect choice, but
he would have. I don't know if Cowlings is he still around? He's kind of been in this thing for a lot of it. So that's probably what you got. I can't imagine there's a lot of people like banging down the door for that gig, but maybe I'm wrong.
Tiger Shark Diver says Charlie Sheen.
There we go. That's pretty good.
But yeah, AC will probably pass on it. Walter says Bill Cosby. Walter may have a winner in the clubhouse.
Chat going off per usual.
Yeah, we're off the rails here on the stream. Vogues, you take care, and counterread.com folks can get signed up, correct, and get great coverage.
I can. Had another good week. Aaron's got some good stuff with the recruiting update tomorrow, so hop on over there to counterread.com.
All right, folks, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? When I point at you, yeah.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. More of your OJ eulogy candidates in the stream we may or may not get to. More spring football thoughts from Matt Rhule and Coach Donnie Raiola. So we've hit the quarterbacks here, and we've spent a little bit of time on that running back room as well. Let's hear a little bit further detail on the running back room, though, with Coach Rhule. Cut 11 here as he details just where that room is at. A lot of you are asking about Gabe Ervin. What's his season look like? I know he's out this spring. You've got the Johnson & Johnson. Quentin Ives is a name that is trying to get into some more playing time, make some more impressions. Here's Coach Rhule.
Yeah, I think it's one of those deals where it's really going to be about the fall. I've seen what Rahmir can do. And what I have to make the staff do is go back and watch the 21 Michigan game sometimes to see him when he was like the feature back. I don't know why he wasn't the feature back in 22, but he wasn't, so it was hard to see. Sometimes you can look at a guy like that, like, we should play him here, and you give him this limited role. Like Rahmir was, lining up and taking outside zones against Michigan and slicing and dicing. I've seen Gabe at his best. I think we saw Emmett evolving into a guy that could take games over. When you look at the run he had at Purdue, you look at the run he had at the end of the game to set us up. I can't remember Maryland, Wisconsin. He had to run in both games to set us up on the last drive. He's getting ready to bust out. I'm a big fan of Ives. Since if you guys go look at it, every time I've talked about Quentin Ives, I believe he can be this, right? I believe he can be this. So this is a big camp for him. Whereas Emmett's trying to take the step into dominant player, Quentin's trying to take the step into, hey, I'm going to be here every day, know what to do, be healthy. And then Dante's in the same boat, right? Dante's trying to take the step into every down back. But the things I see that are positive are really positive. But I think a lot of that's going to come to fruition in the fall. If you're a team to me that has just one back that you play and he has 25 plus carries, you're not doing right by him because he's going to be all beat up when it's his chance to go to the NFL. I mean, we've always wanted to have a 20 carry back and a 12 carry back and then a third. We want to play three guys, and we certainly look like we have enough guys to do that. Well,
and the way I hear that is what you want. You talk about the carries, but let's also translate that into yards. That to me looks like a 1,000-yard back, a 500-yard back, and a 250-yard back on the season. That's what it looks like to
or
me.
A really good year, you're at 1,200, 750, and then a nice combo of that third down back, right, where you can maybe get 300 and change and maybe match that with catches out of the backfield on some screen plays or some check downs that way. But no, that's ideal. I mean, that's 32 carries with a 1-2 punch. You're knocking out 30 carries plus a game. You're in it. You're not abandoning the run because you're trailing by multiple touchdowns. Theoretically,
you're
that
not
also
being a box checker,
right? That also sets up your fourth quarter run to win mentality.
I need to look up how many attempts per game Amir had in 2014 because that's really the last time Nebraska had a solid. I mean, he had 1,600 yards rushing that year, which is more yards rushing than Nebraska had passing last year. If my stats off the top of my head,
his numbers are his season in 14 was incredible, but don't forget he got hurt pretty badly and gutted it out the last third of the season with that knee injury against Purdue.
And he averaged almost exactly 20 carries per game.
Yeah, and some of that ticked upward against the Miami game specifically, where he went off. I think he went for 30-plus carries that game, but was held in check against Michigan State, trying to come back early. Remember talking to Mac Brown. He was at the coaches clinic that year. And he's like, if Amir was healthy and doesn't get hurt against Purdue, Nebraska's probably maybe in the Big Ten championship game again, and Nebraska and Coach Bo are probably back for another season. That was Mac Brown's assessment when he chatted with us.
Well, I'm trying to go back and just find like a comparison of a year that to me seems to fit what Matt Rhule wants with his running back stable. Because I go back, 2011 might be the closest. I mean, you had Taylor Martinez rushing the ball, which I don't think any of the Nebraska quarterbacks on roster run the ball like Taylor Martinez. He's unique. But you had Rex Burkhead go for 22 carries a game, 1,300 yards. Amir got himself about 5 carries per game for 150 yards. And you also had a couple of guys in Braylon Hurd and Aaron Green that were splitting some carries as well to kind of manage that low. But that might be the closest Nebraska has to like an ideal rushing split. Maybe you go back to 2010 with Roy Helu and Burkhead, 1,200 yards and 900 yards rushing respectively.
That was big. I think you look at the Brandon Jackson, Marlon Lucky 06 season.
Let's go back. Let's pull it up.
We are.
Brandon Jackson just under 1,000 yards. He had 989 yards. Marlon Lucky just over 700 yards rushing.
That's
along
good
with Kenny Wilson, 300 yards.
Yeah, rest in peace, Kenny. Let's hear real quick from Matt Rhule as we wrap up Coach Rhule here. What's the importance of Saturday? How much weight is he putting on this scrimmage?
It's just an assessment for where we are right now, right? I told the players before practice, a lot of them think in terms of spots, like, oh, I got my spot. No, I don't think about, honestly, I don't ever really believe until the guys played for you for a couple of years, you really don't know who your starters are until like after game 2 sometimes. Like, you think someone's a starter, then you see them play and it's a little too big for them, or you see someone play and they're just so comfortable. So I don't really think in terms of spots. I think in terms of like development. And to me, there's like this line, okay, hey, he's good enough to win with. And so if you're above that line, you're going to play, right? Some weeks, I mean, we're in the Big Ten. We're playing in weather. We're playing on turf. Guys are going to get beat up. So you better have, not just 3 defensive line starters. You better have about 5 or 6. So I'm just trying to see where assess where they are right now. A big thing for me is, are they at the right position? What are their opportunities they should get moving forward? But this is by no means like this decides anything. This is just a statement for where they're, because I really do believe in, like, I come out and I think I'm going to probably play like at this level, and I play at this level, and the guy I'm competing with plays at this level. Great. Now let's see what your behavior's like the next week, right? Like parents, we mess that up all the time. I mess that up as my kids, like they need adversity to spur them on, to drive them. And so, I kind of look at this as like a ping pong match. You have like the scrimmage 1, then you have scrimmage 2, then you have kind of that spring game, which, although the spring game can be, last year we kind of ran everything. This year I'm sure it'll be a little more vanilla, but in terms of what we run for many reasons. But you still get to see who can block and tackle and all those different things. So it'll be important. And we won't only scrimmage. We'll practice some too, and then we'll scrimmage some too. So we really have to take a lot of time to work on our end-of-game 2-minute situations with the way the league runs, with our recent history, but also with really a sophomore quarterback in Heinrich who's only played 1 year, and 2 young quarterbacks and young receivers that we need a ton of the 2-minute reps. So we'll probably rep a lot of those situations first, and then when they're tired, go live and tackle and see if we can tackle and block.
Well played. That is music to Nebraska fans' ears. End-of-game situations, situational football, how you handle in the last 2 minutes, the last 4 minutes, and what type of situations can you put them in to get them ready for what looks to be another 4-quarter season for Nebraska, where they're going to be needing to turn their fortunes around in those chasing 3 moments. We'll wind down this first hour. Donnie Raiola, thoughts on the O-line as we say goodbye in this first hour with Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time this hour, Gary Barnett, 10 minutes away, hour 2 on the way with Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. Let's hear from Donnie Raiola. And that 3-team format doing wonders for the offensive line. Let's hear from Coach Donnie.
You learn how to play football by playing football. So getting live reps against defensive guys, and the thing about playing offensive line is like the one, like, other positions, but it's the position you got to figure it out sometimes, right? And figure it out together and figure it out with one set of eyes. So, that's you can't take that away from all those reps that they're getting.
So you're starting, or your perceived combined start group looks pretty good. But some of those second team guys or younger guys have been pushing the older guys, and I don't think anything's truly on lockdown yet. More from Dottie, and I want your thoughts on this, Elijah, since you played offensive line. His teaching style when it comes to avoiding those holding penalties, cut 14.
The biggest thing is we block with our knuckles up. We don't grab people, right? Because holding encourages lazy blocking, so we don't teach holding. We don't teach grabbing people. We block with our knuckles up. So that's the biggest thing, right? Where you go around most places, I'm not sure how they do it, but that's how we do it here. So,
I can tell you from going around to other places, and I understand this is one thing about football, is that the techniques of 10 years ago are different than the techniques of today. I'm coming up on 7 years since I kind of went around through the camp circuit back in high school and learned from a lot of great coaches. I can tell you, I don't think I had a single coach teach knuckles up. There's always, you want thumbs up? Because there's a very simple, yes, Connor's doing it on the stream here, double thumbs up, elbows in. It's a really simple test you can do to show that you are more powerful from that position, and that's have one hand that is knuckles up and one hand that is thumbs up, and try to push them down. Whenever the thumbs are up, it engages the bicep, it engages more muscles, it allows you to be stronger from that position. So I'd never heard that one before. That's a new one to me. It does make sense. It is damn near impossible to hold anybody if your knuckles are up. I've just never heard that one before. And obviously the techniques of football change. I'm not saying there's a right way or a wrong way. I'm just saying 7 years ago, whenever I was doing the whole circuit thing, I never heard that. You heard different minutia and little things. That's one I've never heard before, but we'll see if it actually involves or it actually leads to less holding from the Huskers on the ball.
Well, get great hand placement, be great at holding, i.e. don't get caught, or
keep it within the frame of that body, son.
Go knuckles up.
I loved holding. Holding was my thing.
You had to be good at it, right?
Yeah, it's a technique. You work the
art
forearms
form.
a little bit. It's art form, knowing when to let go. Mm-hmm. All of that's important stuff. But I can say I'm not saying Donnie's wrong here by any means. I want to lay that out. I just want to say I never heard that one before.
Got three real quick. Evaluating toughness. I think you can rest assured that you'll have a tough O-line playing Saturdays for you if you're a Nebraska fan.
You know, there's ways to study that when you study the high school film. Just in general, if you see an offensive lineman on film hitting people, like not turning away or like looking blocks in and they're willing to hit people, to me, that shows a sign of toughness, So that's what you look for. And then obviously if you play hard and then, here's a wrestler and all those different things. So those are some things that you study on film.
He was commenting on Justin Evans there. Yeah, you have that wrestling background, which is what you want. Good leverage, good balance.
Great at holding.
Be somebody that is just all sorts of angry, can flip that switch and then just go maul people. I did like the little nugget about Lutoski working at guard, but also tackle, which is nice. That's an option. And
the one thing you worry about, though, in my mind, is that same issue we've had with Corcoran for a couple of years now of not being able to settle in at one position. And it's a case-by-case basis. Obviously, you got to trust the offensive line coach, the guy who sees it every single day, but that piqued my interest as well.
No, and Lutoski spent a lot of time at guard. Maybe they're working him in as a tackle option as well. Coach Barnett on the way, hour 2 with us here on Hail Varsity.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back with you at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We welcome in the Hall of Fame coach, Gary Barnett, with us. Colorado, Northwestern. Coach, are you wearing your Masters polo? You wearing a Masters cap as we talk here? I know you love this weekend.
Well, every golfer loves this weekend. I don't have a Masters polo. I'm watching Sergio warm up in bright yellow pants and a green shirt. He looks like a canary out there. So, unbelievable. And I was just thinking how subdued everybody else was. And then Sergio comes out, and he's got a bright orange bag. Oh, well.
So how daring do you get on the golf course with your golf attire?
Well, occasionally Mary tells me I look like I should be selling ice cream, but that's That's about as daring as I get. I don't, sometimes a white pants, sort of purple shirt, Northwestern purple shirt, but that's about as daring as I get.
Okay. Hey, if you can rock the white pants, go for it, right? And I've got a bright orange polo that I get made fun of still to this day. I think I've had it, 15 years, but it's one of those kind of wicking shirts, and it cost me a lot of money at the time, so I'm going to wear the hell out of it. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
You're sticking to the story that's moisture wicking, and that's why you wear it. Let's face it, when you wear that shirt, you're going to get a lot of attention, and you can only wear it once a year. But I know you, Chris Schmidt, and that's what you're doing.
Yeah, I want people to pay attention to my golf game. That's exactly what I want. I do have to ask you, if you had to choose with the drink of choice this weekend, I kind of know where your heart's at, probably Corona, but the Azalea or the Transfusion, have you had either one of those?
No, I have no idea what those are, but you're welcome to all you can handle. So no, I'm pretty much strictly just a beer guy.
The Transfusion is 2 ounces of Tito's, 2 ounces of ginger ale, 1 ounce of grape juice, 1/4 lime juice. That's the Transfusion. The Azalea is 3 parts vodka, 1 part pineapple juice, grenadine, lemon juice, and that pineapple juice with vodka. So far, it's leading Azalea over the Transfusion. I like the John Daly, sweet tea and vodka. That's a good drink as well. Who do you like this weekend? Who are you going with to win the Masters, Coach Barnett?
Well, I had 5th choice, and there was 4 other choices in front of me. And so the 4 choices in front of me took Scheffler, Rahm, Brian Harmon, and I forgot who the other one. Oh, Schauffele. Mm-hmm. So I probably would have gone with Scheffler just because, he's such a good player, so consistent, and so hot. It's hard not to go with him. I ended up taking Rory as I was the 5th choice. So I'm rooting for Rory. Do I think he's going to win? No, I don't think he's going to win. I think, the odds are Joaquin Niemann keeps getting talked about constantly as a guy that's going to make a move. Koepka, this Abear from Norway. There's a lot of good players out there, and just, who gets hot. But I think if you had to, somebody says you can only have one, I'd take Scheffler just because he's so hot right now.
He has been incredible. 6 of his 8s in Augusta. He's finished in that top 10. And with Rory, I mean, it's been 10 years since he's won a majors. That just blow you away?
Yeah, I know. But he's still young enough and healthy enough. He's got a lot of experience. But, somebody will catch fire, and we'll all watch and see if he can hang on through all this pressure. But Scheffler is the guy that's just so good right now.
Gary Barnett's with us, Hail Varsity Radio, Masters weekend. Coach, I want to talk quarterbacks. There's been a lot of buzz this week. There was an open session of practice at Nebraska, and you had both young quarterbacks really impressed. You've had some real nice development as well from Harburg, at least with his throwing motion. And quarterback coach Glenn Thomas has done some good work so far. That's the synopsis. When it came to playing young guys, you love the talent, sure, but how did you go about kind of developing that trust or putting the kid in position to make you feel okay about playing a young guy?
Well, first of all, you don't play them unless you trust them. Mm-hmm. And the only way you can trust them is by what you see in practice. And I also like to listen to the players and to the other coaches, of course, but I like to listen to the players about what are they thinking? What kind of impact has this guy had in the locker room? What kind of how do they feel about playing with this guy? And I don't ask them that directly. I just sort of listen to their talk. They'll talk about it. If a guy's hot and they're impressed with him, they're going to talk about it, and you just have to hear it. So it's not easy and it's not simple, but it's also not rocket science. Mm-hmm. And it's you're in spring ball, and so there are no consequences. And there's no consequences to anything that happens in spring ball unless there's injuries. So it's really a fun time. It's a good time to experiment. It's a good time to take chances. It's a good time to just, lay it all out there and see what a guy can do and trust him. And then if they don't, then your trust level falls off. And then you got the whole summer for them to work with their other teammates and get that going. But spring, first of all, you don't put too much into it. The year we went to the Rose Bowl, the kid that quarterbacked us in the Rose Bowl was a third-string quarterback in spring. Mm-hmm. So you don't know, and that's why you just don't put too much weight on it.
Gary Barnett's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, how would you approach recruiting in 2024? Matt Rhule's been bringing in a lot of guys during the spring session and really showcasing how Nebraska goes to work. Years past, it's been about the game day atmosphere and experience. It's also been maybe even the spring game for Nebraska just because of the crowds. But would you twist it up? What do you think of Coach Rhule's approach here to use all of the above? Yes, but really get more time with a kid on campus during the spring session and just show him what the program's all about. How do you think you'd go about it today?
Well, first of all, the rules are different now. So you can actually visit kids during the summer. You can pay for or during the spring. You can pay for their visits. And they can bring their parents with them. You can do all this that we could never do any of that before. But we always operated under, if we could get a kid on campus 7 times, then we felt like we had a great chance to get him. If he would come back on his own 7 times, then you knew you were really in the hunt. So just being on campus, being around, being familiar. The first time you're there, everybody's nice to you. By the time you're there 7 times, you got a real feel, if you're an athlete and a parent, as to who's genuine and who isn't. And so it's good for both. It's good for the player and the parents, and it's good for the coaches to have, however many days you can with this young man, because you can only shake hands and glad hand maybe 1 time, maybe 2. The rest of it is pretty much, what your conversation is. How is this a familiar place that you want to be? Is it a comfortable place? Is it a place that fits with what your aspirations are? How do these coaches treat other players? So there's all sorts of things going on in the observations that are made by both sides, coaches and parents and players. So I think that that's a long answer, but just Matt Rhule getting everybody on as many times as possible is the way to go about it. Because you're picking your team. They're picking you, but you're picking your team as well. That's critical. And so you're going to learn things in those 5, 6, 4, 7 days that, are going to say, I don't know. I don't like the way this young man interacts with his parents. I do like the way he interacts with other players and this and that. So you're watching all that stuff. It's all in part of the process.
Gary Barnett with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coaches Clinic was last weekend. Bill Belichick was in Lincoln. Coach, what did you try and do with the coaches clinics, and what was kind of your mission for showing off your program?
I don't know that I looked at it that way. I looked at it more as to get more people on campus and be around more coaches, and to have them see us all of our coaches in sort of a informal atmosphere. Sure. It was more to provide them with the things they wanted to hear. and learn about. And as you go through the fall and you go to different schools, you ask them what sort of things would you like to hear in a clinic, and then you try to put that on. So you try to be their in-state college where they can come and get new information, or their football program. They can get as much information and feel comfortable. I was just trying to make as many coaches feel as comfortable as they could, and at the same time provide them with something that they would go home and say was of value.
Bill Conley with ESPN put out a story here, Coach, and it gets into the coaches movement here, 30 coaches who will define the next decade of college football, and he's got a rundown already. Successful coaches, headlined by Kirby, of course. You've got your young stars. Deion's his own category. Group of 5 coaches, then there's top assistants, and then who's the next DeBoer? That's somebody from the NAIA level or smaller, lower level that's climbed all the way up like DeBoer's done, and watching his career has been fascinating. With you, Coach, were you always looking to jump a level? Were you happy being a high school coach and you did such a good job at just your career naturally elevated? What was your approach when you got into coach, and where did you want to end up?
You know, Chris, I'm a firm believer in have your head where your butt is, and if that needs, you know, you just do the best job you can where you are, and things happen. You'll get choices, and then you got to make the choices. Circumstances occur. When I was a high school coach, we were in a program. I mean, we had a good program. We were good. We were a 4A's team, but they were going to build another high school. And so we were going to drop down to 3A. I didn't want to do that. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to go down to 3A. Well, I wanted to play against the very best teams in the state of Colorado. So all of a sudden, this opening comes up at a small college in Colorado, and it was like it had my name on it. So, faced with, do I want to go down to 3A or do I want to go try this on the college level, small college level? Mm-hmm. So I did. I went and took it. When I was there, we had so many issues and so many problems that I was deep in trying to solve them. And then all of a sudden I got a call from Bill McCartney out of nowhere, literally out of nowhere, and asked me if I would be interested in coming to Colorado. And, that was an easy choice for me. And I did. And then when we were at Colorado, I didn't think we'd ever leave. I was a coordinator. We had good teams. We were winning like crazy. And all of a sudden, a combination of Northwestern coming open with the president who had been at the University of Colorado, my daughter telling me she'd like to go to Northwestern. I just out of the clear blue. So all of a sudden that changed. And then at Northwestern, I never thought I was going to leave Northwestern. And the only place I would probably ever leave was to go to Colorado and then Neuheisel up and leave out of nowhere. And so they just happen. And I think you just bury yourself in the job you have, do as good a job as you can possibly do, keep looking to make it better, love what you're doing, love your kids, and things happen. And that's pretty much what happened to us.
I like that. That's really fun to hear. I want to get your thoughts on Northwestern for the next 2 years using the practice facility that is just beautiful. I've not been up close and personal. I know you have, but that's where Coach Braun's going to be playing their college ball. What do you think of that?
Well, I think we were discussing that this morning, and Mary and I, she said, what a great place to do it. And they're going to build a temporary stadium right there. I mean, you literally are on the water. And so it is a beautiful place. They're not going to play them all there, but mm-hmm. I think the teams that don't travel extremely well, they're going to play them there. And the teams that really travel well, the opponents that they're playing that really travel well, they'll probably go to Wrigley. But I think the players seem to be really happy about staying home and having your own stadium. And, it'll be perfect for them.
It's Coach Gary Barnett at Hail Varsity Radio. We'll have more thoughts from Coach Barnett on the other side here, and then we'll shift over. The confession that OJ made to his former agent, Mike Gilbert. an excerpt from our conversation with Mike Gilbert. A little bit of a rewind as Hail Varsity continues, powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
A few more minutes. Gary Barnett with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. Looking at David Ovens' story from The Athletic, taking a gander at year 2 for Coach Prime at Colorado, Deion Sanders, Coach Barnett. You know, the big question in that headline from Oven is it working? You know, what is the expectation? What's the feel and buzz from your vantage point and just folks you know around the program as Deion gets ready?
I think that everybody's just watching and hoping. There's always naysayers and there's always skeptics, and there were skeptics when he came in, and they're still skeptical. And, you know, they didn't do anything really last year to change that. But I think most of us are watching this happen in a completely different fashion than any of us would have done it. And so I'm just more interested to see if it works than anything else, because you're always looking for a better way. And, you know, his way is much different. And is it better? I don't know. Nobody can tell yet. But I think there's so much, you know, he changed so many things on so many levels so quickly. He's already had a huge impact on Colorado football, Colorado athletics, period. So part of why you brought him there was to make changes. Nobody else could have made these changes as quickly as he has. Now, the football piece of it, you know, that's an ongoing situation, and it's fragile. It always is fragile. But I think everybody's just, they're hoping and they're watching.
Gary Barnett with us. Coach, we'll end with this. And news this morning about O.J. Simpson's passing. Do you ever cross paths with O.J. in your football life?
You know, I never really did. And, but, you know, he was, I just remember his trial, and we were at Northwestern, and everybody was watching it. And so, no, he was such a great player. And, you know, I think that's how I will probably remember him, is just what an impact player he was on the whole sport. So, yeah, it's you never like to have these kinds of things happen, but he was when he was a player, he was great for the sport.
Coach, enjoy your Masters, and are you doing ribs on Masters Sunday?
You know, that's too far down the road, Chris. I haven't even thought about that yet, but that's a pretty good idea.
Well, I know that's your forte, so we're taking a straw poll with it. I'll send you a picture of either the azalea or the transfusion we're tipping back, and we'll let you just wonder, all right?
Yeah, you don't need to do much of that, but that's okay. Appreciate it. Thanks, Chris.
Good to get caught up with Coach Gary Barnett, Hail Varsity Radio, and we shift from Coach Barnett to his thought on O.J. to our conversation a while back with O.J. Simpson's former agent, Mike Gilbert. Mike at one point had possession of the Bronco.
He still technically has ownership. It's just
right, and he
no
had,
longer in possession.
He had the nameplate of the Heisman, had one of the 2 original Heismans. This was Mike Gilbert talking with us after the 30 for 30, right after O.J. got paroled, actually, and went into detail about a night with O.J. in Rolling Rock. The night you asked O.J. about the murders. And the quote is, if she did not answer the door with a knife, she would still be alive. Your book goes into further detail. Touch on that night you spent sitting down having Rolling Rock with O.J.
Wow, you know, and that's one of those very vivid memories, you know, that I have from just that entire period of time. What had happened? We had been walking in and out. OJ would go outside. He would smoke a little bit of pot every now and then, and so he'd walk outside, take a couple of hits, and then when it started to sprinkle, he'd walk back in, and he was showing me where he and Nicole had carved their names into this tree. that they spent, I think, $20,000 or $30,000 saving. It was right by the pool and jacuzzi, so water would get in it, with chlorine. And so he's telling me that story, and oddly enough, I'd never heard that one. And he came back in the house, and every time he would look out at the backyard, that's where Marcus got married. That was where OJ got married. And, he was staring, almost like he was staring at what wasn't there, if that makes any sense. He was looking at like the gazebo where they both had gotten married, and he was staring at what he had seen there before during the good days, and he was going to cry and saying, it's gone, and it's never going to be the same. So one of the trips when we walked back in the house, I just thought, we were having this real heart-to-heart, very, just kind of one-on-one conversation, and I just thought, this is it. This is the time, that I just think he would be open to talking about it. And I asked him, I said, Jay, what happened that night? And he paused and looked at me, and he asked me what I thought happened. And there for that one flash, which was probably all of about 10 seconds, I saw everything pass before me. Do I be the good friend and just, act like I never thought he could have done this? Or do I tell him what I've always thought? And I just thought, I'm just going to be straight up with him. And I said, Jay, I always thought you did it not because I thought of you as a murderer, but just how you were spinning out of, your normal personality during that month. And you told AC that you had gone over that night, and if Nicole hadn't opened the door with a knife, she would still be alive. And he just sat and shook his head, in agreement. And he said, so what did you think? And I said, I've always thought you did it. I really don't know why, but I just, from the moment I heard, I just knew that you had. And he was kind of shocked, I think, with me saying that, because most of his friends had always told, well, I know you couldn't have done it. And I said, so is that what happened? And he said, he repeated, if she hadn't opened the door with a knife, she'd still be alive. And I believed that with all my heart until right before my book came out. And my editor, we were in, I think it was a weekend, Saturday or Sunday, we were at Regnery Publishing in Washington, D.C., and she came in and said, Mike, have you listened to Nicole's 911 call? And I said, yes, of course. And I heard it during the trial several times. And she said, have you heard it without OJ's spin? And I said, no. So I went into her office, and she played it, and I broke down. I lost it. I was crying. I walked the entire length from the Capitol building to the Lincoln Memorial and back. And I told my publishers I just didn't want the book to come out because I knew Nicole and I knew the different voices if she were mad or drunk or what have you. And OJ had always spun it that, well, the 911 call, Mike, she was really drunk and, she was just out of it. When I heard the call, she wasn't. She was terrified. And it broke my heart that I, along with a lot of people, didn't, ask if she was okay. We just kind of like, that's not my business. That's not my job. And so I felt bad. I felt horrible because what he had always said wasn't true. And I just knew at that point that he had gone there and he took a knife. I just didn't believe any longer that she had opened the door, and it made sense. I thought, she could have opened the door with a knife, but why would he tell me like a half truth? And then I realized that way he could still blame Nicole for her death, where he still wasn't the bad guy. Obviously he was still a bad guy, but to be able to say that, if she didn't open the door with a knife and still put the blame on her. But I believe he went there and he had a knife with him, and it changed his history, all of our history, really, and the legal system.
It's Mike Gilbert, O.J. Simpson's partner and longtime friend and former agent before their falling out. Gilbert went into a little further detail in another interview with us here on Hail Varsity on O.J. and how O.J. changed.
When O.J. got out of jail, the night he got home, gave me a hug, and he kissed me on the cheek, and he said, I couldn't have gotten here without you. And the money you made while I was, locked up, I owe you my life. I owe you my freedom. And I told him, you don't owe me, OJ. I made that choice on my own. I did it because that's what I think friends are supposed to do. You stand by them in the good and the bad. And I said, you know what? If you owe me anything, you owe me going back and being the guy that I remember as a kid growing up and rooting for. And the friend that I've always known, the client I've always known. Go back and be that guy that I remember and America remembers. That's all I expect from you. And instead, he started doing things that I had never seen him do. I had seen him smoke pot, but I'd never seen him do coke until after. And what really drove us apart was that final trip down to Miami, Florida, when I saw his girlfriend, Christy Prody, strung out on coke. She had left her apartment, and her cat died. It was just terrible. And I told OJ, I said, OJ, you can party. You can go do coke on a Friday and Saturday and then not do it for a month. Christy can't. She can't. Once she starts, she keeps going. And you know that because you called 911 on her when she was with Pedro Guerrero doing coke. But you do it anyway. You give it to her. And he, the selfishness came out. He said, Mike, when she's doing coke, she's a freak. And I'll just leave it at that. I won't go into details, but it was so self-serving. And at that time, they'd been clean for, a week or two or whatever. And that night, we dropped a friend of his off at his condo in his car. I got into OJ's, and he is offering Christy lines of coke. And I just stared at him and was floored.
That's Mike Gilbert. That's what drove him apart, drug use. You have the incident where OJ gets locked up for the Vegas incident with the memorabilia. And Mike Gilbert, pretty prominent part of that OJ inner circle, some of our past conversations with him. I have not seen a formal comment from Gilbert or his publicist today. But, OJ passing away yesterday. Not a lot of love lost for many, but that flashbulb moment for many, not only the trial, but just the whole ordeal. Remember watching the 90, I think it was the 94, 93 Orange Bowl, where T.O.'s talking to O.J. at halftime. NBC had the broadcast rights, and O.J.'s interviewing T.O., and T.O.'s like, this is before all this goes down. It's like, hey, can you suit up? So,
is that the same game where Bill Cosby did the coin flip?
No, that was Fiesta Bowl. Danny Burke. We'll talk gambling next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Cotter Clark, Danny Burke, Burke'sBeat.com, Burke's Best Bets, at Danny Burke 5 on Twitter. Danny, you are not on the golf course. You are not drinking a Transfusion or an Azalea or a John Daly or a Coldwood. You are here with us in the stream. And what do you like? What have you placed? What are you eyeing for Masters weekend here when it comes to some props?
Or drinks as well.
Yeah, either way.
All right. Yeah, that TBD may let, about like 30 more minutes pass, and then we'll get into that conversation. But in terms of the Masters, guys, I did a handful of bets. Now, a couple of them I was planning to play, but a majority of them come from a friend of mine who I had on my latest episode of the podcast. His name's Brady Cannon, one of the more respected golf bettors that I know. And it started with Xander Schauffele, I believe, was the shorter shot at like 14-1. Jordan Spieth is always an obligatory bet that I place when it comes to Augusta. I'm just always trying to reclaim that glory for Spieth, and will always place a bet on Spieth. Furthermore, I had Will Zalatoris, who's looking okay. It could be doing a little bit better, but maybe someone you monitor going forward. Bryson DeChambeau, actually, I did play, and that was outside of Brady's bets. That's someone who I kind of placed last second at about 35-1, and right now feeling pretty darn good about Bryson being at the top of the leaderboard, 7 under. And then Shane Lowry took a stab at, and I think I'm missing one other person, but nobody insanely significant that's up there on the board right now. So, yeah, I mean, all things considered, can't complain with how Bryson's been doing.
Did you play anything on Tiger?
I did not play anything on Tiger. I know the public loves to bet him outright tickets and to make the cut. And I know there was some sharper money on for him to miss the cut. I know I got him to my right as of this moment watching him. And obviously I'm rooting for him. I'm not going against Tiger in any kind of capacity, but I think the sports books always say the damage that would be caused if Tiger wins is just almost insurmountable. It doesn't matter how he's looking. Doesn't matter what year it is. Tiger is always the biggest liability for these sports books.
It's Danny Burke with us here, Burke's Best Bets on Hail Varsity Radio. And Danny, I saw on Twitter a guy, he was having some people over for the Masters this weekend. What he got as party favors was outright bets on Rory McIlroy. I think he put down $20 each and was handing out the tickets as party favors, trying to get people into the Rory McIlroy experience on Masters weekend, because there's always ups and there's almost always downs. Are you touching Rory? Do you like what you saw from day one? What's your take on Rory? Because I brought up the stat yesterday. There's been a couple of winners that have worn bib number 89, being the last person to show up to the Masters, in Danny Willett and Sergio Garcia. It's Rory this year with bib number 89. Did you play that at all?
I did not play Rory, and if I was that guy, I would have at least divvied up some of the tickets, right? I don't want everybody to have to be rooting for one guy. At least give someone else a shot to win with some other player. Look, Rory's fantastic. We all know this, but he's come up short in these major tournaments the last however many years it's been. And I don't really have that much conviction with him heading into Augusta for this tournament either. Now, he's probably still going to end up in the top 20 and then going to be inching toward the top 10. But based on the price that's always dealt on him, because you get taxed a Rory price being as one of the premier players and his shortcomings, I just don't really like the idea of getting involved with him. The only thing I would flirt with would be a live bet for a top 10 or a top 20 market with him. But I'm going to have to wait and see a couple days with Rory to kind of get the vibes on how he's looking at Augusta.
Danny, you talk about the live betting here. Sorry not to jump in front of you, Connor, but I do want to turn to the live betting. I got some of the lines pulled up. After one day at the Masters, what live bets are you looking at to play over the next 3 days?
Yeah, I'm just looking at DraftKings right now, just to use one book, for example. Of course, shop around and try to find the best odds. But I briefly mentioned Will Zalatoris. 30-1 is what I'm seeing. Again, that's somebody who I would consider. Otherwise, Joaquin Niemann, that's the other player I was forgetting. I also took a flyer on him at 30-1. He's coming from LIV, arguably one of the hottest players in golf heading into this tournament. Not the best showing for day one, but serviceable, right? Good enough to stay afloat and still stay in contention. And I saw this tweet from this guy. His name's Justin Ray, and he said each of the last 18 winners of the Masters have been tied 11th or better after round one. Take that for what you will if you do want to get involved in the live betting sphere, whether it's today or tomorrow. I know there's other stats on where some of those guys finished too. But Will would be one. Joaquin Niemann's at 22-1. I know Brooksy's always going to be a popular name, but I'm not really feeling the Brooks Koepka vibe this year. Max Homa's looking pretty good right now throughout his round, and you can get him as high as 18-1. But at the end of the day, guys, I still think you probably give it till Saturday to start really diving in to these live bets. You get a better idea of how these guys are shaping out. You can narrow the playing field, and you see the consistency. You don't want guys who are just volatile all over the place. Someone who's shooting maybe a 72 and then a 65. You want those consistent under par performances from them. And then what Brady also talked about on my show, see where their strengths have been, if it's been pretty equal all throughout, or if these guys are just getting fortunate with their dominant putting skills, but missing fairways. At some point, they're going to resort to the mean. That's something else you want to figure into your handicapping for this weekend and beyond.
Danny, I want to throw it over to the Diamond this weekend, and I know that there's going to be a lot more golf throughout the next 3 days, but a series I'm kind of keeping an eye on is the Brew Crew and the Orioles. Two pretty good teams going at it. Anything in play for this weekend with baseball?
So nothing that I've scouted out just yet. Tomorrow morning, I'll certainly do a deeper dive. But yeah, it looks like tomorrow for that first matchup with Baltimore and Milwaukee, you got Wells and Peralta. And to me, it's going to be looking to find an angle on Baltimore. Now, of course, I still got to do a deeper dive. I'm not trying to go in with this preconceived notion. But my thought process with Milwaukee this year is that they're going to be a team that plateaus at some point. I'm not thinking they're really going to be in contention for the NL Central when it's all said and done. I think it's going to come more so down to the Cubbies into the Reds. Now, the Reds are still a younger, kind of trying to be a prospering team. The Cubbies' bullpen is thin. They're going to have to make additions there and get healthier. But the Brewers are a little bit of a tough handicap right now. They've started off hot. And again, it's like I don't want to get in front of them early in the year because they may be playing over their heads, which we've seen. But Baltimore should be a better team on paper than them. I know Peralta's a guy to trust if you're going to go with somebody on Milwaukee. So, again, I'll have to do a little bit more digging into that one. But I think Baltimore does get the nod in that series overall.
Danny Burke's with us, burksbeat.com, at DannyBurke5, the pride of Chicago, where you follow him on Twitter, Burke's Beat the Pod, you can listen to. He does best bets with us here every Thursday at 5:40, about 60 seconds. Are you finding some value, or are you running from the Bucks and the Giannis situation here with the postseason around the corner?
Schmitty, that's a tough situation for Milwaukee, right? I mean, the Eastern Conference, I still think without a doubt runs through Boston. And of course, that's the easy thing to say, but that's why a couple months ago, what I did is bet two exactas for the championship. It was Boston to overcome Denver and then Boston to overcome the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, that doesn't mean I think Boston will beat them, but I bet them at like 13 and 14-1 odds respectively. So then I can find a nice hedging situation. I won't spend too much time going into the thick of it, but the East still runs through Boston. The West, Denver still is the best team out there, except it should be tougher come postseason time. The Knicks would be a fun story, but just not enough depth, and they've been dealing with injuries. So it's unfortunate. But, yeah, and Milwaukee's injury kills them too. It's still going to be Boston, guys.
Don't disagree. And Elijah's like nodding and smug and smiling approval with
Bet
his
it now. Bet it now.
Nuggets
over the Celtics in the finals in 6.
All right, there's Elijah, but we'll turn to Danny for the advice.
There's a reason I don't make much money at the sports book.
Burke's beat.com, Danny Burke at Danny Burke5. Pride of Chicago, thank you much.
Hey, you guys are the best. Appreciate you having me on. Enjoy the rest of the tournament.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, it's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Cotter Clark. Get the podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, where you go to your platform and download the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Subscribe and like there. Give us a follow on Twitter at HVarsity Radio, at Schmidt_radio, at Herbal Essence for Elijah, at C_Clark_27 for Cotter Clark. And a reminder to get buckled up, use your seatbelts. It saves lives. It prevents injuries only if properly worn. Make it click. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. We've covered gambling. We've covered spring football. Thoughts on the quarterbacks, the running backs, the O-line. And yes, the news of the day with O.J. Simpson passing away. Your feedback and vitriol on the stream, well warranted. We did not have any Norm Macdonald queued up. One more comment on the Bronco. How many Bronco Hearsts have you seen posted on Twitter? Too many. Well, the Bronco's in a garage somewhere before it got sent to a museum in Tennessee. OJ's former agent, his chat with us a while back on Hail Varsity, Mike Gilbert.
Yeah, Bronco update. I guess a story came out on TMZ today about the Bronco. Which is interesting because I don't remember actually talking to anybody. But the Bronco I do own. I put it into a museum in Tennessee. It's called Alcatraz East. They just built it ground up. They have, I think, a Bonnie and Clyde car, an Al Capone car. They have, it's also like a teaching museum about American history. So put it there. The people down there are some of the most honest and reputable people I've dealt with in probably my career. So I have no intentions on selling it. We've had offers. I did a Pawn Star interview that airs, I think, August 14th about the Bronco. But even before I went to Vegas, I told them, I said, you guys know I'm not selling the Bronco. But they just wanted to do a show about it. So, yeah, it's in the museum. It's going to be there. I think the contract's 60 months, and if it's up to me, I'll just leave it there in perpetuity because I don't think there's a better place for it.
You would not take an offer for it?
You know, it's so funny because my daughter asked me that this morning. She said, Daddy, say somebody walks up with a briefcase with $1 million in it and says, how about now? And I honestly don't know. I mean, I could sure use the money, but I just, there's no reason.
Mike Gilbert and the Bronco es Blanco. So there you go.
Bronco es Blanco. I like that.
I like
that.
It was a Saturday Night Live clip. Way back in the day.
See, I was just watching the Saturday Night Live clip of right after the verdict where they had, I think it was Will Ferrell down in the field, and they had, who was it that was playing OJ in this? They used like the Monday Night Football telestrator, though, and in diagnosing a play, he writes out, I did it.
Yep.
That's a classic.
Almost 30 years ago. So we invite you to check out the full show, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, the podcast. What's going on tonight with you two?
Whole lot of nothing.
Yeah, Connor's like, dude, it's almost the weekend. I'm good.
I'm going to do my work here. I'm going to try to get myself up into Division 4 in FIFA if I have time after the gym. That's about it.
All right.
Nothing in particular.
Well, enjoy. Back tomorrow. We'll check in with Bill Dolman, Jacob Padilla, and Clausburn with some commentary. Talk to you at 4.